Welcome to the FE Insights podcast, a series of podcasts to bring professionals working in the field up to speed with the latest developments, presented by Safaraz Ali, Chief Executive of the national training provider, the Pathway Group.
So welcome to FE Podcast. This is our fourth series, and this podcast, we're calling it FE Podcast. It is for the people who live and breathe the further education sector. We're talking about work-based learning, we're talking about adult skills, and obviously apprenticeships, and many, many more things there as well. We're in Staffordshire, actually Stoke-on-Trent, in the heart of UK, which I believe is Stoke-on-Trent. And I've not been here for a little while, and it was lovely to drive up the M6 and lovely to be here. And we're at the fantastic offices of Acacia Training, and we've got none other than the Chief Executive, Vikki Sylvester. Thank you for inviting us today, and really appreciate you giving us a warm welcome and a tour of these lovely offices. Is the first thing I would say. And in terms of my first question to you, it's the tough sector, we know and love. And there's been many providers who have changed, and no doubt. And, what does it take as an independent training provider? You're the CEO of Acacia Training, and you've had a lot of successes this particular year. What does it take for an independent provider to not only survive, but potentially thrive in this climate?
Well, first of all, it's great to see you, Saf.
Thank you.
It's been a long time since you've been in sunny Stoke-on-Trent.
And
you're right, we are the heart.
Yeah, we are.
So my advice always is how to thrive is by starting with your sense of purpose as a business. What is it you are trying to achieve for people, communities, business, the UK? Even now, I'd say globally. Now, after last year, I think we've learned a lot about how we're part of a global community. Yeah. I think when you start with that, you are doing the right things. You're doing the right things by people. You can't go wrong if you're doing the right things by people. Your team engage with that. So you start to recruit good people into your business. Yeah. So that's first point. I think second is you have to be flexible and adaptable and responsive. I think it's one of the key strengths the independent training provider sector has. We can move, and we can move quite quickly. And then you have to be compliant. There is a boring bit called compliance, but we do have to do that. And it's not an easy sector to work in. It is challenging. My thoughts on it, though, is that the compliance should never drive the behaviour. That's where I've seen people not thrive or get stuck. We've been there ourselves at some points over the years, but when you allow the compliance to drive the behaviour rather than the sense of purpose, you will find it more difficult actually than going from what you actually set out to do, and letting the compliance just naturally form part of that sense of purpose journey. So that would be my advice to anybody wanting to thrive in this sector.
Fantastic, really appreciate that. And obviously we'll pick up, we'll unpack some of those things a little bit later on. But in terms of this particular year, 2021, it's been a challenging year for many. This has been, as I said, your year. Not only have you set up this Staffordshire provider network, which we'll talk a little bit about, I'll get you to tell us a little bit about that, but you've been part of multiple business holdings, and that's really taken off, and that was a slightly unknown, so in some aspects of it, what that would be, particularly for people who are not traditionally aware of these sort of things. So that's been the case. We've had successes with the adult education budget. You've won some awards as well. You've changed some of the staffing team. You've grown as a team, and you've had this lovely refurbishment project, which you've been working on. Tell us a little bit about some of those things, if you can, in terms of how they fitted in this particular year, and what's your how you feeling about some of those wins and successes, and some of the things that we probably don't know about as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to last year when COVID first started becoming a reality, I think we decided very, very early on that we were not going to focus on what we can't control. So we didn't sink into a massive bag of worry, actually, which sounds a bit strange, but we just thought, well, these things here we can't control, so don't we can't, no point wasting energy on them.
Yes.
What are the things we can control? And what are the opportunities? And really, what are our learners and employers going to need? And that really then generated the next steps and the next stages and what we wanted to do. So we kept quite a positive culture, if you like, during difficult times. We're not acknowledging the fact of how difficult it was. But I think by doing that, at least we didn't sink into a depression. We kind of kept focused.
Yeah.
And we agreed very early on that we were going to continue on our plan. We had got a strategic plan, we had got a business plan, and we decided we're going to carry on and carry on with what we set out to achieve. And actually, by doing that, achieve more by the end of it.
Okay.
The awards were really special. We did get the Apprenticeship Provider of the Year, and
massive achievement. Congratulations for that.
Thank you.
I sent you a message as well because your just face just showed it.
Yeah, I did cry.
Your reaction was just wonderful, man.
Do you know what? I never really considered much about awards early on in Acacia's journey. But I actually realised how important they were to people. And I actually realised, particularly that one, how important it was to myself, because, those learners and those apprentices had done so much for the care sector.
Yeah.
It was deserved, and it was deserved by the team. So, that was kind of a special one. The shock was because genuinely, and I know everybody says this all the time, genuinely didn't think we'd win. We were in there with 3 colleges and we were the independent training provider. So we were really, really proud of that, and proud for the sector, actually, both for the independent training sector, but also for the care sector. So it was a really nice one. In terms of the contracts, what they've allowed us to do, going back to that, what do we want our learners to have? What do we want our employers to have? And all the rest of that. It gave us more accessibility to education for people. Our mission statement is, and people go on about mission statements, but, cutting through the fluff, we want to get people in work. We want to create opportunities. We want to progress people. And that funding and those different streams have allowed us now to widen our offer. We had a very, what I would have said, middle offer of 2 to 5, where we could cover really well. And this funding's now taken us into the more hard to reach, unemployed. And that's great because our industries that we serve need people more than ever. They've got increasing skills shortages, staffing shortages, and that's only going to get bigger. So all those different pots of funding have really allowed us to do that. And, there's a lot of things out there, and our job is to piece that jigsaw together of what works for people. And I always say, we're almost like navigators.
Yeah.
We're like navigators, and there's a lot of different ways we can achieve the goals and finding the best way to get there. And it's not always about funding, actually, as well. The commercial offer and the commercial side's actually just as important.
It's definitely complicated for employers out there, particularly when they're just doing their work and their job, and they're having to navigate the funding stream and what's accessible and so forth. And it's not always easy. No. Yes, they can go and search on gov.uk, and it's not straightforward to try and understand what that is and how to sort of make the best use of the opportunities that are there. And if you can go to an organisation, and in some cases you're going to providers where they say, well, actually we can do only this bit, we can't really help you with anything else, or we can only talk to you about that. And if you can offer a little bit of a one-stop type offering, take the learner, take the employee from start of the journey right all the way through. So not getting them a job, then getting them, a better job within the organisation, and potentially, mapping out their career.
Yeah, and I think to your point there, one of the things in our plan, which we've done really successfully, I'm a strong believer in collaboration. I actually recognise that we can't do everything for everybody. Our job is to make sure that we're giving the right journey for the employer and the right journey for the learner, and there is space for everybody. So I tend to have a slightly different approach where, for example, if you think about the Kickstart scheme, we saw the Kickstart scheme as a great opportunity didn't see it as a threat to apprenticeships. Our view was that these young people were not engaged on an apprenticeship and probably weren't in scope to. So actually the Kickstart scheme was an opportunity for them to go onto apprenticeship. So we viewed it quite differently. But that would mean by committing to that programme, we're probably going to go into other sectors where we don't have the pathway for the learner beyond Kickstart or the long-term journey. So that's why we work collaboratively with a number of providers, and we'd identified, so for example, if we've got an accountancy firm that wanted a Kickstart individual and we placed them and supported them as a gateway, we knew which providers in our network were going to signpost them to for the next phase of the journey, and we've got those relationships.
Fantastic.
And I think that's how the sector should operate personally. I think more collaboration. At the end of the day, we're creating opportunities for each other. It comes back round. They'll have a program where maybe they haven't got the right outcomes and we're the right provider for them. And I think that's really, really, and that's back to that sense of purpose bit I was talking about, where it's about focusing on the individuals and recognising what your strengths are and what you're not so good at, and then building your networks around you. And part of being in MBH, so MBH it wasn't a listed entity at the time. We went through the listing process, but it's a group of SMEs, all different industries, not just education. But one of the great learnings from being in there as a business owner, you realise you are the only one that thinks like you in your business.
Yeah.
Everyone else, you're setting out a vision and a mission and a plan. Everyone else is trying to deliver on that plan. So you are the only one looking at it through that lens, or a small number of you. When I went to be part of that group and being around other business owners, like-minded people, all very entrepreneurial, actually, it gives you a bit of motivation. There are people like me. It isn't so lonely. And during last year, I can't tell you, that group of business owners in there, we were in different sectors, we were in different countries, but my goodness, we came together. We jumped on a call every week, whether it was support, advice, signposting. This is coming. Have you thought about this? We're seeing this in our industry. What are you seeing in your industry? And really pulled us together. And it was one of the gifts out of last year, actually, that we've now been on that journey together. And I think it's made us more solid. All 26 businesses got through and are getting through and are now on different journeys to thrive, off the back of this. And I really do think a big part of that was that team solidarity of being there for one another. It would have been interesting to know, as an independent business owner on your own, what the experience would have been for those that haven't got that network. So it was really, really great experience for us.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong here, Vikki, but it's a this is agglomeration that we
that's right.
This is a model. So the company is called MBH, which stands for Multiple Business Holdings PLC. So you're a director now of a public company, and you head the vertical for the health and social care training providers or training providers. Is that right?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I wasn't originally on the board when we joined. We joined as one of the first companies. But my role on the board is to represent all the companies from all the different sectors in the group at board level. Because the business owners they run their businesses as they always run them. They make their own decisions. So actually, they're the major shareholders in the PLC. So they actually should be driving the direction and the decisions. And that's my job, is to be that bridge between the board and the company owners. And I also take on sort of the environmental, social governance piece and make sure as a group what our strategy is, what our plans is, how we're going to do this in a very, very diverse environment. So it's very interesting to do. So that's what that is. But that was all about making small business accessible to investors. So rather than investors, giving 20 grand or whatever to their mate down the road to go and set up a business that they never see that money again, or it might be 20 years late. Because let's be honest, we never go on time frames really in small business. The idea was, because small business makes up such a big part of the economy, It gave investors a more safer way, because we're so diversified, to be able to invest in small business and see a return on that. But for the business owner, it allows you to work collaboratively and grow and be in a more healthy environment to work in. So it's actually agglomeration is a wonderful, I think, wonderful model, and I'm so glad we did it. Even though at the time people were saying, be careful, and this is so new. And honestly, it's been the best thing we did. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on the board or I actually really believe in the concept. It's a lot aligned to what we are. It's a lot about business justice in a way, you know, but it is about social justice. All those people are creating jobs. All those people are contributing to the economy. So it is a really, really good thing.
So you said you lead on the ESG element of it, and I know you do a lot of work on corporate social responsibility. You talked about purpose and good and doing the right thing and so forth. Talk a little bit about in terms of where that is and what you're driving and what your beliefs are in.
Yeah, I mean, environmental and social and governance, it is a journey, actually. It's one of those subjects that can feel very overwhelming because there's just so much information. I always, equality and diversity comes into that as well. And that's a whole piece, and inclusion, that's a whole piece on its own. So it's been a journey. You're forever learning. There's always new things. But my point of view is that we are part of a global community. COVID taught us that faster than anything ever has. Yes. We do know our planet is changing. That does create injustice in the world. And we are educators, and educators is the answer. Education is the answer. So we should be embedding this into our education system. And if you've got, for those that have got children, you're probably finding your children are taking more note of this because of Greta, and raising awareness. My children, I've got 3 daughters. They recognise what gender equality is. And they're young, they're like 12, 13, 15. It's already important to them. And how we look after the environment and what that future looks like and what we're doing. And I think we should be embedding that in, but not being overwhelmed with it, picking a few things, start with moving your energy to an energy efficient energy supplier. It's a massive impact on carbon, It's not a big task. Yes, it's a bit of an inconvenience getting it moved, but once it's moved, you've done it. So there's some really simple things. So from my perspective, from a group, I don't want to get to, because they do constant acquisitions, 100 companies, and then go, oh, now we best look at this, I want to be getting this embedded in our culture right from day one, and companies on board with it. And the same as we're doing here at Acacia, we have environmental social champions, for example, in the business. Your team have amazing ideas, and it really matters to them. And we can only do it with a global effort at the end of the day. But education is the key, and I think we're missing an opportunity by not embedding that to what we're delivering, and teaching businesses. There's benefits for business; they can save money. But I think there's going to be more focus from insurance companies, all that kind of thing. Where they'll be putting premiums up if you haven't got certain things in place. And going back to my point right at the beginning is we don't want to be driven by legislation on this. We want to be driven by the sense of purpose. That holds more value and it holds more weight than being told to do it and then doing it, So these are the things really I focus on for
Fantastic.
the group.
We're sort of coming out, we've just had COP26 and obviously everybody's been talking about climate change and so forth, and so all eyes on the UK, and UK wants to be leading, and some, or individuals think it's a government thing, it's not necessarily an individual thing. And so your message really is, even as an SME, as a micro business, we can all make a difference and all do our bit and really
100%. I don't want to get political, but let's be honest, waiting for the government might be slower. We could be doing stuff now. And if you don't watch anything else from COP26, I would definitely recommend watching Richard Attenborough's 7-minute speech on YouTube, because he says it all in 7 minutes.
Wow.
He says it all in 7 minutes. And I really, really think we haven't got time to sit and wait, and there's absolutely no need to. There's really simple stuff we could be doing and getting this in and not being driven by legislation.
Okay. I mean, you talked a lot about collaboration, just changing subject a little bit. You talked a lot about collaboration, partnership, and so forth. I mean, you set up the Staffordshire Provider Network, and, we've touched on a little bit on it, but I want to delve a little bit deeper in terms of what that is. I mean, you're obviously a founding director of that entity, and how does that work?
Well, it's actually existed for many years.
Okay.
Yeah, it existed as SPA, which was the Staffordshire Providers Association, and then that was just independent training providers. And then it actually merged with colleges and universities and other stakeholders, careers, enterprise and so on, local authorities, and became SPES, which is Staffordshire Partnership for Employability and Skills.
Yeah.
So it is a local partnership, and we are quite unique in that we do have all those different stakeholders. It's not just independent training providers, and we are trying to look locally at the offer, locally at the challenges and how we can do that, because actually Staffordshire is quite a diverse and quite a big county. And then we've got a city in there with Stoke-on-Trent. So it is a lot about collaborative working, but also addressing the challenges locally and the skills gaps and so on. We became a limited company, which I think is probably what you're referring to. Yeah. So I got asked to be vice chair a few years ago. We recently became a limited company, which is great for us because we've now become of a size. I think we've got nearly 50 members now in that group, which is quite a sizable provider network actually. Basically to allow us to do more, be able to do more for the members. Right. We were an informal partnership in a lot of ways, whereas that's now made us more established as an organisation. So we could go for bids, for example, under the SPES. We couldn't before. We'd have to try and find a prime provider in the group and so on. So it's given us more avenues to do, and to be honest, I think makes us a more credible organisation. For us to be able to do more locally. So, it's a great network, actually. There are a really, really good bunch of companies in there.
Okay. I want to talk on a slightly personal growth level, Vikki, if I may. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of changes. You've had, your people that you've leaned on, and people have leaned on yourself, and you've been a support mechanism for yourself, for many. Tell us a little bit about how things have changed in your mind at this moment in time in terms of coming towards the end of 2021. What does that look like in terms of that self-analysis, self-awareness?
Yeah, I mean, I've been here now for nearly 22 years, and when I look back, that cheeky little 20-year-old that came into the industry thinking I knew it all and nothing fazed me, and then you go through a big phase of learning off the back of that, how to be a good manager, what does a good manager look like, to what does a good leader look like, to actually really getting in depth. It is a journey, and it's not something you can rush. It will happen as you make your way through that. But one thing I've learned over the past few years is that to enjoy my job and enjoy my work, I have to be driven by what I set out to achieve. Yeah. And that's made it way more fulfilling. And having a really strong people focus has made me a far better leader. I don't mind, sharing and coaching. I don't have a possessive nature of, look, we've done this and we're not going to tell anybody else, because I kind of think about the bigger picture. And last year, embedded myself right in with the team. I mean, you've seen the office layout now. I don't have an office. We're one family, one unit. And I think I really learnt that kind of culture and behaviour and being that kind of leader actually gets you better outcomes. You think it won't. But, I have providers ring me up and say, oh, have you got a policy you could share with me on this? Or what are you doing about that? And I will share, because at the end of the day, it's about the best outcomes for people. I'm a member of the community, and so are so many other people. And I think the more we can do with that, those more kind of behaviours as leaders in this sector in particular, because at the end of the day, we are about social justice. You know what I mean? We are about value. We are about communities. I think that really sets us aside the good providers from the not so good providers, or the ones that are going to thrive and the ones that are not. I think they have to be driven by the right reasons. So yeah, I've definitely grown up, Saf, over the over the years. You know, sometimes you give yourself a hard time, don't you? You look back and you think, oh, it's a little bit embarrassing how I used to behave, you know. But the truth is, that's just my learning. You know, I always say I'm an apprenticeship in leadership. It is that journey. You know, you do learn, you do meet new people, you do develop. I've had some wonderful mentors and coaches. I've been very fortunate. I've also had some terrible advice over the years as well, that you've thought, I've got to do that. So, for example, you know, we'll all have gone through it. Leaders behave in a certain way. You know, you have to be, you have to be all about the numbers. You have to be all about the sale. This is how leaders lead, you know. And it's like, kind of feels right out my comfort zone. I was way happier when I was just trying to fix a problem in the care sector. Yeah. And you go through that journey and go, I'm not happy with this, you know. And I feel I'm in my 40s, just a really good place with it. I know who I am. Yeah. I know what I want. I know what I want for others. So just in a way better place. I've kind of got my own style now, and I'm happy with it. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I don't feel the need to be something somebody else expects me to be. Yeah. I've learned that actually just being me is the way better thing to be. But it takes a while to accept that. I know that sounds really silly, and it sounds like it's a really simple thing, just be yourself. It's actually really, really hard. And being able to say, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll go and find out, you know, rather than feeling you have to know it all. So lots and lots of learnings. But, you know, I actually found last year showed me the strength of a family culture. When the chips are down and things are hard, we stuck together like a family and we looked after one another. I think that's credit to not just myself as a leader, but all the people in the business and how we worked through last year.
Yeah, and a lot of it is about being open-minded as well. I mean, if you're doing the right thing, being open-minded and looking outwards, you know, we sometimes do give ourselves a much harder time than we need to really.
We do. We are our own worst enemy as leaders.
Tough on ourselves, and we see things from a different perspective where, you know, somebody else will then say, you know, they're doing a pep talk to you to say, come on, it's not, we can do this. And because sometimes we can go into that element where we're tough on ourselves and you know, we change our perspectives and you are a very down to earth and humble person, Vikki. You know, obviously we've known each other a while and our journey has changed. I mean, we've had different levels of relationship, and we started our journey as a subcontractor to Acacia back in the day, when you were sort of on the sort of IQA side of things and so forth. So, and I've seen that growth, and you know, you've been a big part of our growing up and our journey, and that I will always, you know, even if you don't say it, I will always remind yourself the fact that, you know, you're part of our incubation, you're part of our journey, and this is one of the reasons why I cried myself when you won the Apprentice Training Provider of the Year, and it means personally quite a lot to me. So really, really appreciate that. In terms of the getting back to the so some of your sort of thought leadership element of, particularly with regard to recruitment and retention and upskilling ourselves. I mean, we're a training provider, and we upskill and reskill others, but in terms of our own staff development and our and firstly recruiting the right people and putting them on the right seats and then developing them, how does that sort of sit in with you, and what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think recruitment and retention is a challenge for everybody. I don't even think it's just industry specific to us, and I actually don't think it's been caused purely by COVID. I think that's been an element, but I think there were numerous elements leading up to that. But I think more than ever, you know, having a culture where you are flexible. I think people expect more flexible working now, more work-life balance, more help with wellbeing and mental health and physical health, and for us even financial health. You know, our team have a financial coach now off the back of last year to help them with achieve personal financial goals, because they come to work carrying all that worry. If they have got debt, or they have got problems, or they don't know where to go. So I think you definitely need to be more than an employer. And in terms of attracting people into your business, I think actually trying to externalise your culture is quite difficult. You might think you've got a really, really good culture, but trying to get that across to other people can be very difficult. It's once they're in, maybe they start to realise it. But I think, your team are your best ambassadors for you as a business. And if your team are proud to support you publicly, then you will attract people in. At the end of the day, they're not going to believe the CEO. Oh, look at us. What a wonderful company to come and work for. It's like, whatever. Of course, the CEO is going to say that. But I think when your team do that and your team are proud to work for you, that's when you will recruit good people into your business. So all those things are absolutely critical. And I know we've talked before, there is not a day where I am not thinking about the people in this business and the future people coming into this business. Not a day. And they are the heart of it at the end of the day. And you have to work very, very hard and be visible as a leader with your team, which can sound challenging, but technology is wonderful. We jump on a call every Monday afternoon at 4:30. All the team jump on, and I just tell them what the business is doing, what we've been working on last week, what our plans is coming over the next few months, every single week. That visibility and transparency and feeling involved in the business, I think really is really important. And work-life balance, it's a tough industry. And I think you need to work to live, not live to work, for a cliche phrase. But last year, I think that taught people more than anyone the value of family, where they were spending the time, life reevaluations. They're going through all that at the moment. And they've gone through insecurity, health problems, loss. So really, you need to be thinking about how you support your team with that going forward, to keep your people.
There's a lot of generalizations, in terms of, we can't get the right staff. We've got to look outside, and all this crisis within the sector. Not I'm just talking about our sort of skill sector, let alone the sectors we try and service and support. How have you found recruitment generally? If you just hone a little bit about in terms of getting people in through the door.
It's been if we were to list out tough challenges in this phase of COVID, recruitment's been it. It has been really, really tough for everybody. I don't even think we've got enough people in the UK anymore to fill all the job vacancies we've got out there. So we've had to be quite creative. We've done a transition to teach programme, which we're basically putting people from industry through their petals for free, with a guaranteed job interview with us, to try and train some new people into the sector. I don't think we've done that a lot actually over the past 4 or 5 years. I don't know why. Maybe it was a fear of not being able to be allowed to make mistakes, which is that legislative driven thing I'm talking about. There was a very high, everything's got to be perfect all of the time, but actually mistakes are part of the learning. And I think that's left a gap in our market of new people coming in. So we've had to be quite creative, but it is paying back. We are getting people into jobs, new people into industry, and hopefully, there'll be some that go into other providers off the back of that as well. So, I think you're just going to have to think outside the box with this one this time.
Yeah, fantastic. In terms of some sort of words of advice, if I may, particularly in terms of leaders and managers within this sector, and then potentially independent training providers or learning providers. How do we navigate? This navigation word that you used earlier on, particularly with where the sort of source of information for employers, but how to people, employers, independent training providers, and leaders in our sector. What should we be looking at? What should we be focusing on in terms of thriving and in terms of next year 2022?
Yeah, I think our sector has a really bad habit of overcomplicating everything.
Yeah.
So much so we get so tangled up in the complexity of it that we forget the really simple things. So my advice would always be what it is you're trying to achieve in your sense of purpose. As I've said, I would definitely always start there, but it's what do people need? So if you're a learner, what does a learner need? They need a job. They need a job with a career path. They need to earn money. They need to not be in poverty. What does somebody that's unemployed need? They need to get into work and get a job. And that might mean we need to remove some barriers around learning needs or social barriers or challenges. So think about the basics of where people are at. What's the destination? Rather than what is the funding band or what apprenticeship is on the IFATE website. Yeah. Just actually think about what do people need and where's this journey going to take them, and stick to basics. And then my other piece of advice for people to thrive in this sector is collaboration is a gift. And use it and take it, and don't rule it out as competition or threats. Or, there are some really good people to work with in this sector. And together you'll achieve way, way more than you will on your own. And we've always had with subcontracting, for example, it's been very dictated how subcontracting should operate. And it can be a very slave-master relationship sometimes where it actually means the provider isn't doing what they set out to do anymore. They're doing what somebody else wants them to do. And there can be different reasons for doing that. So my advice is don't be driven by funding bans. If you want to solve problems for businesses and learners, have a look at what they need and almost be the shield protecting them from the complexity of it. We'll go figure out the complexity of it. That's our job. And come back with something that makes it equal and accessible and fair for people. And my final point would be think about that added value bit. Think about that environmental bit, that social bit, that you can be adding value for very, very little cost to enhance, really, society and communities and businesses.
Okay, fantastic. That was some general nuggets of gold there. But on a personal sort of individual level, what other advice would you say to leaders in terms of their own personal development and really how it's leadership is tough, isn't it? In some cases, and what would you say to leaders? My advice would be you are the best leader when you are the version of yourself, the best version of yourself. Don't be scared by vulnerability. You don't have to be tough. You just have to be real. Your mental health is just as important as anybody else's. And I'm not just banging the mental health drum, talk about mental health, but very often leaders feel they have to cope with everything and they have to manage everything. But if you're struggling, other people are going to struggle. And one of the things I've really learned, which I will share, is the value of rest and sleep and peace. Really? I used to think the harder I work, the more I get done. This is what a leader should do, but actually I do take time now for reflection, take quiet time. It's not wasted time. It's actually we don't have to burn the midnight oil as such. Yeah. You don't have to because the world never stops. It will never stop moving. So don't feel, and this is going back to that when I was younger, I used to fill every gap I had in my diary thinking that's what I needed to do. I do actually now put time aside just to go and think things through. Think and plan. And then when I come back, I'm far more focused. And when I'm far more focused, other people in the business are far more focused. So it's not wasted time. It's probably actually the most valuable time you could have. Yeah. Being aware of all those will definitely make you a better leader. And don't be afraid to say, during COVID last year, if I was having a difficult time or a difficult day, I would talk to my team about it. Whereas before I used to be, I can't tell a team. Yeah, that's going to make me look really weak and they're going to think they can't. But actually you realise when you go, I'm a human being as well. They go,
they open up, oh yeah, do you know what, I'm so glad you've said, because I've been worrying about that, let's work through it. And you actually start to come up with solutions. So, don't be afraid to be yourself, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable. We are all human, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I've picked up from you, that I've learned from you, Vikki, is that you don't have to have all the answers in every single. Sometimes it's about minimizing risk, but you can't completely eliminate risk. And once you've made up sort of a mind, then it's a matter of just working it out and being adaptable and responsive to what the opportunities are, and like you said earlier on, control what you can control, and there's some things you can't control, and just going out and being confident in the fact that you can deal with it,
and not being afraid of failure. I think we give ourselves a hard time if we don't succeed. But at the end of the day, nothing's ever a waste of time. You will learn actually way, way more from failure than you will from success. And you should enjoy success, because we're guilty of that as well. We don't enjoy it. We just go, great, done that, move on. What's the next challenge I need to resolve? Enjoy success, but don't be afraid of failure, because at the end of the day, if you don't do something and you don't take the shots, some are going to miss. That is absolutely inevitable. It's not a failure. It's a missed shot with a lot of learnings. You're a failure if you do the same thing again and make the same mistakes. That's what I think. Personally, if I did it again, I can give myself a hard time then. But if you've done it and it was mistakes or things you needed to know or things you didn't know, and you've took them learnings and you've applied them somewhere else, then, I always talk about, I get mocked for it a bit, but it's fine. I talk about gifts and opportunities. Always look for, in every single situation, the gift and the opportunity, even the bad ones, even the dark ones. Look for the gifts and opportunities that could come out of that, because that's where you should put your energy, not your energy on who did what, who didn't do what, this isn't fair, that didn't happen, blah. Just look at the gifts and opportunities. And if you do that, you will find ways, 100% you will find your way to get through that challenge, and you'll fix it quicker. So
there's a lot of learnings there. I mean, in terms of opportunities, I mean, what are the things, 2 or 3 things, if you can share with the audience, with myself, in terms of what are the sort of projects and programs you want to sort of get into or finalise and so forth? I know one of them is the Investors in Diversity. You're working towards that, but is there these sort of things that you're focusing on? You want to say next quarter or next half of the year, we want to try and box these things off?
Yeah, we've done 2 things this year. One is we set out on a wellbeing journey. Right. So we thought we were quite good at wellbeing. So maybe this is another hint. Don't ever get complacent because there's always more. But we thought we were pretty good at wellbeing, or the people thought we were pretty good at wellbeing. But then we brought in a wellbeing consultant. We wanted to develop a wellbeing strategy and learn again. There was still more that could be done. There was still more we could do. So we take those things really constructively. And for that few £1,000 we invested into that, we've had a really good staff retention. So actually you do get the return. The National Centre for Diversity project, again, we think we're quite good at diversity. But where could we do more? Where could we be better? What don't we know that we're missing? So that's the whole purpose of that project, really. And it always comes back to the vision. We're trying to make education accessible and break down barriers and give people career paths. So we've got some learning to do. It's not just about identifying what we're good at, because you can actually maximise more on there. If you're doing something really well, you can think about, well, what could we be doing more then? If we're doing really good at that, how do we do more and add more value? But also, what things could we be doing that we're just not good at, or that we're deluded at thinking we are, we're just not. So that's what those 2 journeys are about. We're also looking at social value measures. How do we, as a training provider, you'll have certain measures in your business, but what do we need beyond those measures about social value? So we've got a whole project running on that. That'll start next year. So we can start to see the purpose of that is to make sure what activities we're doing and what level of impact they're having. If they're having a small impact, then why are we putting our energy in? We want to be putting our energy in where we can have the bigger impact. So that's what those are about. And then I suppose finally our business for good strategy. And it's really, really simple. We have projects in the business where we say, I don't know, for every dental learner that achieves their qualification, something good will happen somewhere else. Yeah. And that's literally what it is. So for every dental nursing student that passes, dental care is given to people in Africa. You know, we have that all throughout the business to create a culture of giving. Givers gain. If anybody wants to take anything from me, givers gain. And the whole idea of that is, if we're creating a positive impact here, how do we make sure somebody else is benefiting from a positive impact somewhere else? And that all feeds into this business for good and our social obligation. And it's really, really straightforward to do. I think we've had nearly 300,000 impacts. You can go on the website, you can see them all the time. But, you know, even people's gift of time will donate to something, and it doesn't cost a huge amount. But it's more, we can measure the impact we're having, whereas before we were doing things, you know, charitable things. And I'm not saying don't do those, because we do. We couldn't measure whether you're having a small impact or a big impact. And the whole point was to make sure we can measure our impact and know what we're doing and what we're benefiting and how our work is creating more for others. So, lots going on.
There's a lot going on.
A lot going on, but all of it good stuff.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Really appreciate that. If someone wanted to get a hold of yourself, you're obviously easy accessible on social media. They can just hopefully Google your name, and 2 or 3 pages of content comes up with all your videos and various things that you're doing. So you're very easily accessible and approutable in that aspect.
You can find me. Just be warned that when you type my name, a supermodel also comes up. So don't get confused with the supermodel, but yes, you can absolutely find me.
Fantastic. So thank you, Victoria. Really appreciate that. It's been very nice to come and see the lovely offices and see your growth and have a conversation in terms of the journey that you've been on. We've sort of shared some aspects of that journey, particularly in the last decade, and so it's always refreshing to have those conversations. Really, Victoria, really appreciate it, and thank you for your time. So that was myself in conversation with Vikki Sylvester, the CEO of Acacia Training. This is FE Podcast. We're here for the sector, the further education sector. So if you're interested in being a guest, and if you've got something to share with our audience, please reach out to myself. Thank you so much, and we conclude our 4th episode of FE Podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the latest news and insights from the further education sector. Safaraz Ali will be keeping his ear to the ground, and we'll be back soon with new developments and comment from some of the top professionals in the field.